right, welcome back. This week is International Fraud Awareness Week, and it's in its 24th year. This annual celebration aims to inform people and organizations about the significance of fraud detection and prevention. It is not modern to commit fraud, I must tell you. Individuals have been tricking one another for personal advantage since ancient times, even before money was created. Now, let me share a true life story with you. Hegistratus, a Greek merchant, committed the first known fraud in history. In 300 BC, the merchant attempted to commit bottomry and insurance fraud in order to use the floating keel and hull of his ship as collateral for a loan. A clause in the insurance declared the loan null and void in the event that the ship sank while in transit. Now, he attempted to drown his ship, but his crew and passengers caught him, and he then drowned while attempting to flee from them. Do you also know that Charles Ponzi, who defrauded banks of roughly $20 million in 1920, inspired the name Ponzi scheme? So as you can see, the practice of fraud is not new. The goal of this year's theme, of course, which is Fraud Prevention in Focus, is to provide you with the knowledge necessary to recognize early warning indicators. Vigilance and awareness are more important than ever because financial crimes and scams are becoming more sophisticated. We actually would also do take you through the information that we will have to tell you through what you should know concerning fraud education and fraud awareness. Now, let me quickly bring in my guest. He's Donatus Ogbonnaya, the President, Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, Lagos chapter. Mr. Ogbonnaya, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning, and it's a pleasure being here.
Now, let's get started. Our reporter went out to the streets to actually find out how many Nigerians are aware about fraud. Of course, it's the International Fraud Awareness Week this week. It ends this weekend, and I don't know if you were listening earlier to that report. The denominator that I saw there, why Nigerians are justifying that, is that people will graduate, no jobs, so they can actually they can be fraudsters and begin to steal. Do you agree with that?
No, I absolutely would not agree with that, okay? As you said, the International Fraud Awareness Week, or the Fraud Week, is meant, for anti-fraud professionals to come together and look at the gruesome and far-reaching effects of fraud in organizations, in the society, and the society at large. If we really understand the impact of fraud, there is absolutely no one who's going to give an excuse for indulging in fraudulent activities. So the Fraud Week or the Fraud Awareness Week is meant to, enlighten and educate the public and organizations of the impact of fraud, to the community and society at large. As you know, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners in the annual report called the Report to the Nation that is published annually have said that, occupational fraud in 2022 alone, cost about 5% of the global revenue loss, which, in numbers, came to about estimated $4.7 trillion, okay? So if we understand the magnanimity, the weight of what fraud causes to organizations, and to the society at large, then nobody will want to indulge in fraud. You know that fraud has different facets to it.
Yes, that's actually my next question. Can you hear me, Mr. Ogbonnaya? That's actually my next question. That is fraud only financial? Because when people talk about fraud, some people may just think about it as only financial. I gave a brief history of when fraud, at least historically, started when we had a documentation of it, 300 BC, the popular Ponzi scheme, Charles Ponzi in 1920, and that led, because the US saw that in the 20s, they were now able to establish SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, at that time in the 20s during the Great Depression to be able to do this. We also had, is it a Benny Madoff? Yes, Benny Madoff, was it 2008?
Yeah.
Yes, 2008, where over $40 billion he defrauded, including celebrities that you think would know, would have information, you know. So is fraud only financial?
Well, fraud, anywhere there is money, there is fraud. There's likelihood of fraud. But what we will be looking at is the impact of fraud. Normally, fraud is committed for financial gain, you know, financial and personal gain. But it does not always, you know, absolutely involve finance or money, as it were. You know, we'll talk about asset misappropriation, we'll talk about financial statement fraud. And of course, the grandfather of them all, grant corruption. So fraud ultimately will have to do with money. But what we are presently is what is the impact of fraud, wherever it is committed. As I said, 4.7 trillion is lost to fraud. And then if you look at the larger aspect, which is corruption or grant corruption, as it were, that is perpetrated by politically exposed people, you'll find out that the impact is everywhere. You know, because money that is actually meant, or funds that are meant for the larger society, is cornered by a few. And they do not use this for the interest of the public, but they use it for themselves and their families and cronies. Okay. And this is why today people say after graduation they cannot get jobs, because monies that are meant to create jobs have been cornered by a few. Hospitals, schools, roads are all in disrepair because funds that have been allocated have been earmarked for this project, developmental project, have been cornered by a few people.
Okay, Mr. Ogbonnaya.
Generally, some of the impact of fraud, you know that it will not be advisable for anyone to get involved in it.
Okay, Mr. Ogbonnaya, I think the next rational question to ask you would be, how do you identify a fraudster? Because in Nigeria, there are many, angles to it. A lot of people are also being phone scammed. A lot of people, their WhatsApps are being hacked into, that they will begin to use the contacts on their WhatsApps to begin to defraud people. You also have even bank frauds. A lot of people will go to their banks and not even to get the account balance. The account officer will say, you have 0 now. I'll be like, how? Or you will just be there and you'll be seeing debit, on your alert, getting debit alerts when you are not the one making the transaction. So how do you identify a fraudster? Then can you give us tips to avoid being victims?
Okay. As I said, there is no art of knowing the mind's construction from the face. Okay. There's no one that you have fraudster written on his or her forehead. The only thing we look out for, anyone, let me say, anyone can commit fraud. And that brings us to what we call the fraud scheme, which is the pressure, as your respondent said. They finish school, no jobs, so they are under pressure financially. Even those who are working, as you said, in the bank, they may be owing a lot of money, and they may be involved in some adverse lifestyle that they need to sustain. Therefore, they are under pressure. Now, what happens when you are under pressure, financially, and now the opportunity brings itself or rents itself by way of, I am working in the bank and I have access to people's account. That's an opportunity. Of course, the pressure I have will move me to, take money from people's accounts. You know what? I will quickly rationalize it and say, listen, I do not have enough money. I'm not well paid. I work hard. Most times the rationalization comes in form of, entitlement. Even at workplaces, people steal company property, people steal things, and they rationalize that they are working so hard, they work for so many years, and they are not getting properly remunerated. That is one. Another aspect of it, going from the fraud time, which I've just talked about, we have the fraud diamond, which the fourth leg of it, which is the ability to commit this fraud. If you're under pressure and you have the opportunity and all of that, and you do not have the capability to commit the fraud, you are not able to commit the fraud. So, on a nutshell, you are not able to, until the fraud is committed before you can say this guy is a fraudster. Moreover, there are red flags that every fraud professional, counter fraud professional, must look out for. When people earn a certain amount of money, for instance, and they live beyond their means, okay? They live beyond their income, supposed income. Questions should be asked, all right? If you work in an environment where you are paid 50,000 naira and you do not have any bequeathals from family, you did not win any lottery, your father or grandfather did not leave you any treasures, and suddenly you appear, with, you appear one day in a brand new Lexus, SUV. You suddenly move your, apartment to some of the highbrow places in Lagos or Abuja. Then somebody should be asking, what does this man do? How did he get this money? Those are red flags of people committing fraud. And of course, we have, as I said, there are various forms of fraud, cybercrime, identity theft, and all whatnot. There are several forms. All these are trends, and in a fraud space. And let me equally let you say this, that the rapid development of technology, has equally increased the rate of fraud and crime, financial crime, because technology develops almost by the second. And this meant ordinarily to help us in running our businesses properly. But while we are doing this, other people are thinking of ways of subverting the technology, which is now through what you call 419 and Yahoo and all of that. So people will always rationalize their acts. They will tell you, I don't have a job. But then, are all non-job, unemployed people involved in fraud? Absolutely no.
How do we, protect ourselves individually from these red flags that you have mentioned? As a person individually, then as a company, as a business, because businesses are also prone to frauds. I've read different reports, at least for some time now, even from PwC, from issues of cybercrime, alliance reports, and all of that. Companies are really falling into that trap yearly, which is also making them have increased costs as to how to avert cybercrimes and those frauds. For example, I also read a report that identity theft is reducing, but costs are increasing. Perhaps because of biometrics and technology advancement, but we also see that companies have increased costs. So how, as an individual, should I protect myself from thefts, from fraud, as well as how do businesses protect themselves from fraud?
That's a good one, Nancy. We must understand that fraud pervades all facets of our life. All facets of our life are prone to fraud. Organizations, as you said, are not spared. I just said to you now, 5% of revenues annually are lost to fraudulent acts. Now, how do we protect ourselves? Is part of what we are doing presently, and we do regularly. What you do not know, you're not able to fight. So once we understand the fraud trends as individuals, then we tend to put on the necessary controls. Let me, for instance, we're talking about identity theft. You do not need to expose, for instance, your passwords to your bank account or whatever to anybody. You will see people give,
including your family member.
Hello?
Including your family member, because I see a lot of people giving their ATM cards and their pins. They were like, "Oh, it's my brother. Oh, should we do that?" Because they will justify, "Oh, we are the same blood."
That's no way. Your PIN is private and your personal identification number. It should be personal and personal to you alone. The moment you start to share with family members, you are exposing yourself to identity theft. Let's know that. The moment you expose your PIN to a third party, you are exposing yourself to identity theft. There are no two ways about it. The cards, the credit cards, debit cards, whatever, should be, appropriately protected. That's at an individual level. At corporate level, we advise that organizations to know that fraud is real. They should start, taking steps to employ, to have in their payroll, trained professionals who are able to conduct fraud risk management. Set up hotlines, whistleblowing lines, conduct continual staff training. If you see fraud, please say it.
If you see something, say something.
There's a saying that says when you see fraud and you did not say fraud, then you are a fraud.
Okay.
So people do not even understand what fraud is.
Okay.
They sit with a pair and they see the pair misappropriating company property. But because they do not know that it's a fraudulent act, they don't say anything.
Okay, Mr. Ogbonnaya, let me bring in something because we have another interview, so we need to go like in the next 2 minutes. The question I asked you earlier, let me bring another dimension in terms of you saying your personal identification number is personal to you. What if, for example, and we have such scenarios, that you have our seniors, the aged amongst us, and they have their phones, they have their ATM cards, and they give their children their passwords. They give their children their PIN numbers. What's in case of emergency, for example, where they can't even talk, or sickness comes, they are in the hospital and all of that, and there's money or, the resources they need is within a resource that they have, but they can't access it. So, in that case, what do you do? Perhaps should we give our children our password in case of incasity?
I understand you. It's a tricky one.
Very tricky.
For our ageds that are not educated.
Some are not even aged. Some don't even remember. Some cannot even remember their passwords or their PINs. And they'll be like, you have technology savvy children. Mary, this is my PIN. Chidima, this is my PIN. Do you understand what I'm saying? So
I do.
Give me those two scenarios, the aged and even not the aged.
Well, for the aged, I can understand. But still, at that point, they are not the ones that create the password. Because if they are aged and not unschooled, or, they are down with ill health, of course, they automatically are giving their children their power of attorney to operate their account. So that child now has custody of the PIN of either the granny or whoever. It's now incumbent on that child or that ward to protect the PIN. It's very important. Now, if you are educated and you feel you are busy and you are saying, "Hey, baby, here's my PIN number," you are playing with identity theft. There are no two ways about it. Your kids may inadvertently expose it to their friends, and it may even fall into into a wrong hand. Let me even say something quickly. Some of us, say, "Oh, I can't remember. I have so much going on. I'm very busy in the office," and they write down their, PIN somewhere. Somebody will, lay hold of it, and they will clear your account. We don't have. There are no shortcuts. Nobody's going to give you any further remedy about this. So we're even advised not to put our PINs or save our PINs in places where, hackers can get into it. Because as you know, these days, even people are occupying themselves, in the name of being computer savvy, learning how to hack into people's accounts or people's accounts. So you must protect your PIN and ensure that you change your PIN regularly. Change your PIN regularly. For any reason you expose your PIN to a third party, you must ensure it is changed. Because any transaction that is conducted through or with your PIN is as good as having been conducted by you. That is the bottom line.
Okay, I think we will leave it at that now. Thank you very much, Mr. Ogbonnaya, for joining us. At least it's the International Fraud Awareness Week. We've done our part as, a program, a financial program, economic program to increase the awareness of why this week is important and red flags to take note of. I hear a lot of people say, oh, they hacked into the WhatsApp and all. In fact, I had an experience. Was it about 3 weeks ago and 1 month ago? I belonged to a group, a WhatsApp group, and someone called me and said, oh, that there will be a Zoom meeting later in the evening. I will send you a link. Can you just click the link? And all? Of course, in my mind, I was like, if you're a fraudster, I'm 2.0. You know, I understand where you're going to. So I was like, oh, okay. What's the name of the group? He couldn't. I said, okay, but I know the convener of the group. Tell me what his name is. I asked him a few questions. He just hung the line on me. So immediately I had to alert the group, sent the picture. It happened that he had hacked a member of our group, and that person did not do a two-step verification on WhatsApp. But I was able to send that information very quickly to the group for other people to be aware of. And other members of the group said, oh, that the person has been calling, in fact, one person fell prey to that person. And you can imagine what will happen to the contacts of the person on the phone. So thank you very much.
Let me quickly chip in before I run off.
Mr. Ogbonnaya, we have to go. Okay, about 30 seconds, 30 seconds.
Yeah, what I was going to say that we should all be aware that phishing scheme, which is what you just experienced, is prevalent. Recently, too, there were a lot of such sent out as coming from a bank, asking you to update your app. So we must not be too fast to press links. We must not be too fast to press links, because those links could mean your clearing of whatever you have in your bank account. Or even
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ogbonnaya. Thank you. Let's talk again soon. Thank you very much. I've been speaking
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Donatus Ogbonnaya, who is the President, Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, Lagos chapter.